And in the one video I'm going to actually review here that he did a little brief thing on is he talked about the Ammortal Chamber. That's spelled Ammortal, Ammortal. Because there's actually, it kind of fits his niche from the standpoint of he covers a lot of things related to athletes. And believe it or not, like MLB and some of the teams in there, and I think NFL too, have invested in this $160,000 Ammortal Chamber. And yeah, I have some things to say about it, because honestly, my research in up to now 25 different wellness product categories is vastly superior to Adam's and really most people in the industry, because it just takes so much time. I have on average 12 to 15 hours of research per product category. So the types of modalities that are used in this Ammortal Chamber, again, I have about 12 to 15 years of reviewing brands, research, stuff like that in those. So I have a little bit more to say. This is kind of just like a, hey, check out this chamber sort of video. It's actually not that informative, and I'm a little bit surprised because he says, you know, he's about the data and stuff like that, but he literally doesn't ask one single question, questioning the validity or even the value of this quote unquote recovery sort of whatever anti-aging tool. Now, you may have seen the Ammortal Chamber. They spent a lot of money offline touring around different athlete training centers. They've gone to a lot of different health conferences. So if you've kind of circled in those worlds, you may have come across them. First thing you need to know, I'm going to boil it down real quick here. $160,000 price tag for the 5 different modalities. I think it's 5, whatever, we'll go over them. But for the different modalities that are offered in here or stacked together is definitely a ripoff, at least as far as what they're offering. The modalities themselves, what I would recommend is pursuing, in other words, investing in each of these modalities that are offered here independently with some of the top companies, which I can actually literally guide you on. And you can actually put together the package of wellness modalities on your own without having to have it all be provided in a single piece of equipment here. So if this Ammortal Chamber was designed a little bit differently, you possibly could justify that price tag. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's still a little bit on the high side. Make definitely a lot of profit. It potentially could be more justified, but they're not really doing a great job at any one of their modalities, and they certainly leave a lot of questions to be asked. And a lot of those questions about the specific specifications of modalities go unanswered, to be perfectly honest, which I'm not surprised by, but you should also be a little surprised by. For $160,000, they want you to kind of take a leap of faith and just kind of take their word for it and not really answer a lot of questions if you want to do deeper discernment. So let's break down what this is all about here. And we'll push play, and he is on mute. So here's a cool little angle to see. Okay, so in the other image, we were seeing somebody, we're looking at the side of it, laying down on this. That is Plexiglass, if you haven't seen it up close in person. So it's just regular Plexiglass. You might be thinking this is some sort of like fancy design Plexiglass that takes the light spectra and focuses it in some special way. No. For $160,000, it is not some special piece of Plexiglass. It should be. There is a company that's one of the top sellers in the photobiomodulation full body space, which you may have come across. But you basically are laying on a table that has LEDs, near infrared and red, beneath you, right behind you. And it's just one side. It's just kind of like a big table, like a massage table almost. And that's called LightStim is the company. I have a good relationship with them. If you want a deal on that, LightStim bed, they have some of the best validated research. There's really only a couple brands that do whole body photobiomodulation like that, who are really best in class and have good validation as well. But I'm bringing up LightStim because if you read their whole backstory, and it's worth reading because my whole critique here on Ammortal will make a lot more sense. They spent a lot of time trying to figure out what type of material, first off, is it plexiglass, is it glass? What do we need to work with if we're going to put diodes, LEDs specifically, underneath and shine it onto the backside of somebody with no clothes on, because you want to make sure that you have good depth of penetration and absorption of the wavelengths. They spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. Lightstim did, not this company. So it's not an easy task. There's so many variables, and I'm not even going to get into the physics of it. But basically, Lightstim is a perfect example of, like, I think they charge 45 to 60 something thousand. That's a little bit more in a justifiable direction, from at least from the perspective of how much R&D it required to make sure that they could deliver therapeutic doses of energy in the body through what you're resting on, which is basically the plexiglass. So their plexiglass is actually lensed, if you will, in a way to enhance focus, so on and so forth. The varying photon incoherent beams of light, the wavelengths from the LEDs. So it's a little complicated. They didn't do any of that stuff with the Ammortal Chamber here, and they couldn't really anyways, because of this right here. You see the body contour, the zero gravity angle, if you will, bending like that and coming down an angle like that. It would have made it like, it's just impossible if they were trying to produce any kind of lensing effect. Also, because they decided to nest in here, which is cool, but they had a recess in here, these wires, these coils for the PEMF. That's another reason they couldn't design the plexiglass to enhance what's happening from the diodes coming up from underneath. So it is what it is. So basically, this plexiglass is just about the zero gravity effect, which has to do with how it's angling the body, right? The contour, if you will, and supporting, allowing the light to pass through, quote unquote. But as I said before, there's a lot of design flaws here. Aesthetically, this thing is so cool. You know, it looks great. I mean, for sure, A+. At least in my opinion. Some people might think it looks ridiculous. But anyways, moving on. So what's the challenge here besides the plexiglass, possibly, especially with the coils and the angle right there, possibly interfering or not really helping with the incoherent beams of the LEDs? Let's actually back up a second. I'm going to phrase this as a different way. Imagine that the plexiglass was somehow designed in a way that could enhance the light wavelengths. Regardless of how magical and cutting edge the plexiglass was, I'm just saying a hypothetical situation, why you would never want to invest a lot of money in an Ammortal chamber with regards to the near infrared and red photobiomodulation aspect, which is this on the bottom. The reason why you'd never want to invest a premium price is because those LED diodes are quite simply too far from the body, especially with thick plexiglass in between. They're just too far. Now, I am not saying that you will not get any red or near infrared benefits from the top and the bottom here. I'm not saying that. Okay. However, you can still calculate how much loss of power or how much the therapeutic effect would be diminished based on how a photobiomodulation piece of equipment is designed, right? I'll give you, so here's an example. What if these diodes on the bottom here, what if they were like 100 feet away? I'm being ridiculous, but I'm here to prove a point, right? You would say, okay, well, if the diodes were 100 feet away from my body, I mean, it probably wouldn't do anything. You would be correct. That would be too far away. You see, but why? See, so you understand the logic of that. Yeah, 100 feet, it's ridiculous, so stupid. I mean, the energy probably would never reach my body, right? Exactly. You're too far away. So that what that has to do with is something called the inverse square law. And you should definitely Google it or jump on YouTube, say, what is the inverse square law, with regards to light, okay? So that has to do with any electromagnetic radiation source. If you forgot science, the light spectra of near and red falls within the electromagnetic spectrum. Anyways, so that calculation you can make with the infrared square law has to do with, from a specific light source, at certain distances, the power of that light, which you can measure, obviously, the radiation of that, it diminishes in a way that can be calculated, cleanly calculated. There's a formula. It's actually extremely easy to understand if you just look it up. Okay, so you understand 100 feet, that's too far. All right, well, once you look at the inverse square law, and you factor in specifications of diodes on most light beds and this bed, let's call this a bed, then you can also figure out that, I think that where the body is positioned here on the zero gravity really is less than ideal. It's a little too far from these diodes, basically, once you factor in inverse square law. Especially when you realize that there's been, I think it's been, what has it been, 12 years now since the first light bed on the market came out, Novo Thor from Thor Labs, which back then it was great. It was best in class. Nowadays, you can do a lot better, by the way. Just in case you go Google it and you're thinking about buying it, I would just slow your roll a second. There's definitely vastly superior, better value options out there now than Novathor. But anyways, there's been a lot of research, a lot of beds, a lot of development in these sort of full body light bed scenarios. So that's where this is coming from. This is just too far. And even the worst light beds out there, the worst, okay, they don't put their diodes that far from the body. The worst ones. Okay. And they're real bad. I've critiqued them in other videos. So and everybody in the entire industry would agree. This is just too far. Okay. It's not like you get no energy once again, but for the price you're paying, if this was like $500 for at least the photobiomodulation aspect of this, I'd say don't worry about it. Like, definitely buy it. You know what I mean? It's cool. It's going to do something versus not have it. Spend $500, at least on that portion, right? But it is, as you know, if you divide up all the modalities over across $160,000, you're paying a primo price, okay, for these LEDs. So wouldn't you want to get the maximum value out of them? So that's what I'm saying. What your body's actually receiving, it's like taking a significant percentage off that 160,000 that is just, you're just literally just wasting. You're blowing your money and you're blowing your time, essentially. There's literally a photobiomodulation LED bag that covers the entire front side of your body and back side, and it's right on top of the body. It's in a type of pad. I sell a lot of those. I'll put the link below in the description if you're curious, or you can email me, of course. And even their low-end one, that's that's 1,500 something bucks, so pretty cheap comparatively. Even that will deliver more energy to your body than this in the Ammortal. A $1,500 LED bag or pad. It's like a sleeping bag. That would still deliver more energy because of not just how strong and bright the diodes are in that particular high quality pad, but more so because there's a lot of diodes and they are right on top of the body, right on your skin. So how much of that energy are absorbing? Like, we don't even need to calculate. It's 98, 99%. You're based on inverse square law, you're getting all of it pretty much. So that's going to give you way, way, way more energy and thus better outcomes. Anyway, so I'm just, so when I give you that kind of perspective, it's like, Jesus, this thing is a primo price. You're spending a lot for aesthetics. Let's move on. Now you see those coils right there. That is another modality. That's a vibroacoustic device. That's a PEMF device right there. I might as well point it out because it's a useful angle. Okay, right there. Let's push play so we can go back to the next, to hit your touchscreen button. Now, yeah, it is lowering, as you can see with this, the top section here of diodes. And still, by the time it finishes lowering, it's still kind of a little bit of a distance from your body. That's not quite ideal. Now, I know we're about to move on to the next modality, but there is one more important thing to say here. In the field of studying, all the companies that have studied and looked into diodes, LEDs, on a flat panel, see how it's flat there? See how it's flat there? Okay, those are mounted on a flat panel. Yes, it's at an angle there, but still based on where your body is positioned at the same angle, it's you're basically in line, if that makes sense, at the same angle, thus it's still flat to you. Does that make sense? If your body was totally flat and this was angled like this, it would be angled technically against your body. My point that I'm coming at right here, it was already found a long time ago that basically for at least the top body, where LEDs are going to be a little bit of a distance from your body, it's better to mount the LEDs on an arc, on a curve, just like a tanning bed. So if you haven't seen these whole body light beds, they are using red and near. All of them, almost all of them, will mount the diodes on a curve that's over the body. And it gets really complicated with the engineering of how the incoherent beams are interfering at different angles and all that kind of stuff. And it's a lot to calculate. It's not easy for the engineers. But basically, the finding is still the same. That if you want to get the most even distribution of power density across the entire surface area of the torso, you want to mount them on a curve if they're going to be a distance from your body. And it's still even more a little complicated than that, but I will just end it there and just say the curve is better than flat. And that is also still a critique also about the standalone LED panels. Flat panels are inferior to curved panels. Okay, if you're going to, again, be a distance. Now, being a distance is not ideal, but anyways, we'll move on. Here's a fun little design. And again, another way to see the coils here. Now, this diagram is not very accurate, this rendering, because the coils that they're showing here are massive. I wonder if that was actually an original design mock-up, come to think of it. That's interesting. But anyways, these PEMF coils here actually would have been a little better coverage of the body, but they're actually a fraction of the size. They're much, much, much smaller. Let's see if we can pop up the next modality. Here you go. Let's talk about hydrogen next, because that's just popped up on the video here. If you follow my channel a while, I've been in the hydrogen space in the United States almost since the beginning, since it came into this country. Again, it was like 12, 13, I forget how many years ago, 14 years ago. I've looked at almost every hydrogen product. This is hydrogen inhalation. Long story short, I'll make it very simple. I do sell a few machines of hydrogen. You can spend between $1,500 to $5,000. That's basically where you should spend your money. And even then I could critique and compare, but basically it shouldn't be justified to be spending more than that is really what I'm getting at. And in fact, there was actually one of the current best hydrogen inhalation devices that is closely now on par with raising tissue saturation according to the medical studies on inhalation. That machine's $5,000, okay? Now, again, if you divide up the cost of $160,000 across all the modalities, you're definitely spending a lot more than $1,500 or $5,000 for hydrogen inhalation to be offered through this machine. Are they doing anything unique with their hydrogen inhalation machine? With Ammortal, no. So you can get the same quality as this, if not better, by pursuing hydrogen inhalation separately, and you'll spend a fraction of the cost. Hydrogen inhalation is an incredible modality. 1,600 studies. It helps with like everything. Hydrogen plays a role directly and indirectly with so many different processes. It's signaling-based medicine. So great to have, but not great to spend a fortune on, like in the case of the Ammortal. And you may not know, by the way, that again, there's so many different companies that are offering hydrogen inhalation, okay, as a standalone. And if you have a standalone device, you can use it while somebody's already in a zero gravity getting other modalities, which I haven't even explained yet. So in other words, you can replicate the effects and get superior effects than Ammortal, building your own thing. And again, if you have a standalone hydrogen, you could also be administering it while somebody is doing anything else, doing IV therapy, sitting in the waiting room, getting a massage. I mean, it just goes on, right? You got a nose, you're inhaling the air, so you can combine hydrogen with anything. So it's kind of nice to have a freestanding hydrogen machine. So this is the PEMF coil, and they've mounted them in Plexiglass. Nobody else has done that in the PEMF space. Doesn't really give you any advantages by doing that. And the coil is not really my big critique, per se. My critique is it took me 7 years to really feel confident and get clear on PEMF therapy or PEMF devices that are in the industry and the research. It's complicated because it gets into electrochemistry, biophysics. So that's just really complicated. It's an amazing niche in terms of like health, you know what I mean? But it's difficult. And to get a lot of information, inside information, you kind of have to work with a lot of different companies. You have to talk to people. It's really hard for the end consumer. There's a lot of bad copycat PEMF devices out there. Most of it's crap. And just so you know, And according to my opinion and some actual third-party tests and facts, it can also not be good for you. It can also be sketchy. And I'm the only person in the PEMF category that even brings that up, sadly. So there is definitely a lot of PEMF that's used by well-known individuals out there, promoted by well-known individuals, used by highly accomplished practitioners, that is very sketchy. And you really got to start to wonder what's going on. Some of the most popular companies have no research on their devices. I know, it's crazy. They have no research on their devices. And they can't clearly answer a lot of questions about the efficacy and safety. But they're making millions of dollars, and so are the people promoting them. So when I was doing my due diligence on the PEMF with Ammortal, it's not surprising that they are not really very transparent about what they're sharing with regards to the PEMF. So, red flag. If a company is not very transparent about with specs, and you can't even begin to attempt to do an apples to apples, which is not even that easy. But if you do want to attempt to do an apples to apples comparison, you do at least need to have clear specifications about a particular brand of PEMF. So good luck getting the specifications with regards to this company, especially when you're spending $160,000. But what I can tell you is 98%, it's most of the PEMF in the space, most of the brands will be offering sine waves and square waves in terms of the waveforms and of the frequencies that are coming off of their coils. So most likely, it's almost a pretty much 100% that the PEMF that is in the Ammortal is offering your body square waves and sine waves, either one or a combination. You will find a few that have triangular waves and trapezoidal, and then you'll find two companies that have sawtooth. Technically, one is a normal sawtooth wave, and the other one that's patented is a modified sawtooth wave. The best in the industry in terms of what it's doing on a cellular level, including where some of the best research has been performed and studies on a device or behind a device. It's one specific brand out of Germany that uses a modified sawtooth wave and has specific effects on core cellular processes, extracellular and intracellular, ion transport, redox functions, all kinds of interesting things. I've talked about it on my channel before. It's probably the one that I sell the most, also because it's the only one that has a 6-month return policy, which is not surprising because 99% of people get efficacy with almost any condition, which is insanity. It's insanity. So they offer 6 months. No other company offers that. Anyway, so I sell that one a lot. But anyways, back to this. So long and short is that sine and square wave have limited therapeutic applications. And furthermore, even if you found that, I healed up my knee issue or whatever it was, something musculoskeletal in a shorter period of time, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that, with the PEMF out there. I even sell a few. If you do like something for a localized issue, it speeds up the healing for a few weeks, and then you're done. You're done. Great. It definitely served you. I have nothing negative to say about that. But I have something negative to say about PEMF companies that are sending PEMF throughout the entire body with those particular waveforms, regardless of the frequencies, but just those particular waveforms to the whole body. And people are doing that day in and day out or for long periods of time. I have a lot of problems with that, especially treating the entire body, because we know, based on research, that square and sine absolutely screw with the movement of ions between cells and between tissues, across cell membranes. It absolutely makes them move in unnatural ways. So that's my issue. In fact, if you're curious to learn more about that, I have an over 500-page book. I always forget how long it is. Maybe it's 570-something pages that covers super crazy in-depth PEMF info. I'd be happy to share with you. Just email me, and I'll send it to you. It's a PDF that you can actually open up online and read. Anyways, so if you're like, Alex, I don't know about that square wave, sine wave, messing with my brain and messing with cells in my nervous system and all kinds of stuff. Well, Yeah, it's all in there. That research is actually out there. And I actually have a video on PEMF waveforms that discusses that. But, you can always ask, if you really want to know if a PEMF company has actually really put any research and development into their device, you just have to start asking them more questions. And so with like Ammortal, something like that, here's the question to ask that they're going to hate you for asking. Say, for $160,000, I'm really interested in the benefits related to recovery. So first off, when it comes to recovery, and you know what, I'm also interested in regeneration too. So it doesn't really matter which one you ask them. So pick one, regeneration and recovery. How would you define, within the context of your technology, recovery, enhanced recovery, or enhanced regeneration? How would you define those processes, in the body? And how does your technology help with those specific processes? See how that's what matters. So if we say recovery, everybody, there's a million products out there that aid and help with recovery, and almost none of them define recovery. You ever notice that? We enhance recovery. What does that even mean? What does that mean? So you got to grow them and say, okay, well, there's many metabolic processes that have to do with recovery. Which ones? I just pick one. Can you just tell me about one of them? One aspect of recovery. Just go into that for me. And then if they actually can, again, we're always going back to price tag. Oh, it helps with this one little aspect of recovery. Cool. Well, there's obviously a lot more other aspects. Is it worth now $160,000? You see how you can then back into it that way, and then think about other things maybe that have maybe a broader scope of helping with recovery. Anyway, so even with PEMF, you gotta be specific. Okay, you don't want to reveal your proprietary specifications, so I can do my own due diligence. Fine. Then can you at least tell me what it's doing in the body? Now, just remember that just because they give you an answer, it's going to be a very vague kind of answer, not very non-specific, and just do not be ever satisfied with that. This is what it takes, to raise the red flags, and then to also back up to how much money you're spending. Okay, thanks for that answer, but you just ask a follow-up question. What specifically, right, is it doing in the body? Okay, how is it able to do that? And then if they give you an answer with that, just remember that with most PEMF, a lot of the studies are on very specific things, right? So we found that when we use these settings, it was good for this, again, this specific thing. Okay, so, Ammortal, if you're saying it's good for this specific thing, does that now mean that I should be treating my entire body with these coils? You see what I'm saying? This is the problem. A lot of PEMF devices, they're using specifications that were found in research studies for treating very specific things. Let's say one specific localized, let's say arthritis in the knee, whatever, okay? All right, cool, great, love that, treating for a few weeks. Does that mean that now I can use those same settings for treating my entire body, for months at a time? You see what I'm saying? But this is what the PEMF companies are doing. They're then just saying, oh, well, it was good for that, so, treat your whole entire body. And nobody's going to monitor that. You want to do that day in and day out for several years, go for it. That's what's happening. There's a lot of things happening, but that's one thing that's happening a lot. So that you have to grill down, with a company like this, what are you really providing? And what was that found to be good for? And then, okay, what if I'm treating for my whole body? What about for this condition? There's just a million, you get it. There's a million questions to ask here, especially for $160,000. Especially when I could tell you that the most validated PEMF in the world, that had some of the most impressive, well-known scientists and researchers on, is $3,500. $3,500 with a 6-month return window. See what I mean? How much are you spending on the PEMF that's included in Ammortal? So if you want to be like, Alex, what's the best PEMF that helps with this aspect of recovery for an athlete or for whoever? I could actually tell you with this other PEMF. Well, this helps specifically with this and that and this and that in your body. I know it sounds kind of obvious, but trust me, just start asking the questions. And you're going to be like, whoa, I'm not happy with that answer. If it was $300, I'm definitely happy with the answer, right? Now, even if this thing was $300, you don't want to be taking chances with your body, especially with certain modalities. Like, there can be real side effects. And again, that's what most people don't know. In the wellness space with all these modalities, there tends to be like it's all good, bro. Rose-colored glasses. You'll find it everywhere. And nobody's asking any hard questions to any of these companies. On podcast interviews, summits, they're just like the fucking heroes. Excuse my language. They're just like the heroes. Like, oh, you invented this thing. Wow. Let me bow down and worship you for being so innovative. Nobody's asking any questions, really, at all. The vibroacoustic aspects of this, vibroacoustic therapy, awesome. I'm a fan of all the modalities. It's just not necessarily the way they're providing these. So there's great research behind vibroacoustic therapy. It helps with a lot of different things. One aspect is that parasympathetic shift, especially once you put some headphones on to do your brainwave entrainment, right? To also, great synergist. If you look at who all the main contributors and researchers were with vibroacoustic therapy, you can then back into where those research scientists and body research, like what brands actually, like where that research went, basically, in the R&D of what vibroacoustic standalone brands. But there's at least 30 years now in vibroacoustic therapy. It's definitely very well proven. It's okay as a standalone. It's really, I think, shines when you combine it in a stack, with other protocols in a sequence or at the same time. I think that's truly where it shines. But definitely a good thing to have in there. However, the way that they're putting their transducer coils right here, let's just say these are the best transducers in the world. Let's just say that, okay? Even if they were the best, if you look at the best placement of transducer, vibroacoustic, speaker, etc., it's not here on the Plexiglass. First off, there's already going to be a challenge with putting these into Plexiglass that will technically alter the way the body is receiving the frequency, the vibration. That's a gray area right there. Okay, new frontier. It could greatly inhibit it. We don't really know. The other thing is when you have, let's say these again were world class, you would never want to put them on the sides like this. Yes, it is technically traveling through the Plexiglass, but you want to take full advantage of putting those along the spine, and even as a standalone that somebody can use in a handheld on top of their gut, on top of their chest, some localized areas, but you want to put them in certain positions around the person's back along their spine. And ideally, you just want as little obstruction from the transducers to the body. So the positioning on this is not great. Now, I don't really have a lot of good data on the transducers themselves, but I could tell you there is a good, better, best out there when it comes to sound and things like that, how it's propagated. But that doesn't even matter, because again, even if these are the best, it's just the placement is all wrong. It's just not ideal. It will have an effect on the body. I'm not saying it won't. But again, I'm keep going back to the value. For $160,000, right? I would want the best vibroacoustic, right? I would want the best delivery, the best placement on my body for that kind of price. And that's not what you're going to get in this example. So if you want any guidance, once again, of course, vibroacoustic, there is, for example, a zero gravity chair out there. So you can still be zero gravity that has built-in vibroacoustics, position better on your body. And now that the person's in a zero gravity position, you can put some brainwave entrainment headphones on them. And in fact, the world's best, most proven validated brainwave entrainment is not what's included in the Ammortal. It's once again a standalone company that you can now get through their app. Just get some really super high grade headphones. And you can put those on your patient or on yourself and get the best. The world's best when it comes to, for example, they have many different tracks, but let's say you want enhanced regeneration recovery, they have the proven best patented brainwave entrainment method. It's not this company. So you can just go get the app, put the headphones on, and have a better experience when it comes to audio brainwave entrainment. And you could put that on top of a superior vibroacoustic zero gravity lounge chair. Interesting, right? And then I could steer you to the best, most well-proven, validated hydrogen inhalation therapy device. Well, this is getting interesting, isn't it? What does the Ammortal have that, what is it really? No. You get where I'm going with this. Okay, what's missing? Got the headphones, got the Vibroacoustic, got the PEMF, right? So we already told you there is absolutely a most well-substantiated world-class PEMF that's out there. Pretty cheap. And the nice thing about that PEMF is it can travel quite a distance. Like it could go up through an entire mattress. So you can easily find a place to do that PEMF while the person's in the zero gravity chair already. Why don't you lay it on top of them for 8 minutes, where their body's then going to go into a 10 to 12 hour adaptation response after that one session. Just 8 minutes. Just lay it on top while they're getting the other modalities. 8 minutes. Or you can treat them for 8 minutes ahead of doing that session. It's just 8 minutes. You can do it ahead of the other modalities. Okay? There's also a very strong, like the best, 63 preset LED panel that's curved, that can be angled at the exact angle of the zero gravity chair and put on top of the person. And it's got way more diodes. Way more diodes. Thousands of diodes. Curved versus what the Ammortal is providing. And 63 custom presets on there for different conditions. Because what? Because you always want to treat with photobiomodulation with different specifications. There's 6,000 plus studies. Do you think you're going to be able to vary all those near infrared and red frequencies, pulsation rhythms, duty cycles, power density output? Do you think you're going to be able to change all the settings up on the Ammortal with their photobiomodulation? Nope. And the same goes, by the way, for almost all the photobiomodulation light beds. There's only a couple out there with presets and only one that has 63. You want to treat everybody differently because they are different. Obviously, they could have overlapping, like same conditions, but you get the idea. You're going to have enough people where you're going to want to deliver the best outcomes, which means you have, you treat everybody differently. Does it make sense? So that is one critique of a lot of light beds and panels, is they just use the same settings for everybody, ignoring 6,000 plus studies, like they didn't find anything in all those photobiomodulation studies. So I know I'm taking a back step there, but I forgot to make that point. Again, for $160,000, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. So you can get a panel, has more diodes, and you can change the settings to get the best outcomes for that person. And I haven't even totaled all of that in my mind, but I think that's going to be somewhere around like 16, 20, 30. It probably comes out to like 30,000. Maybe a good amount under that, actually. But my point is, let's say it's $20,000 to $30,000 to do your own custom stack like that. Yeah. Do you think that's a little bit different than $160,000? That's a pretty big price point difference. So if you were considering spending $160,000, how cool is this? You could now have 3 or 4 setups like that. Maybe you're a busy place, and that actually does make sense. Maybe you just want to grow as a business, right? You don't want to spend a lot of money right off the bat. Or maybe you're thinking at home, I would love to have an Ammortal Chamber, but I'm not going to spend $160,000. But you could spend $20,000 to $30,000, right? So really, obviously, we all know spending less is going to help. Either you can treat a higher volume of people because you have more of the system set up, or you're just not going to take as much of a financial risk if it's a totally new business model for you, right? And you just would rather spend a lot less. So to have the best of each of these modalities, you want to pursue them separately. Okay, long story short. And you can still allot about the same amount of treatment time for the session to do them all as you would have with the Ammortal. So it's not really affording you necessarily a time advantage by going with something like this. So actually, I'm sorry, these PEMF coils are a little bit larger in some of the sections, but regardless, we still have questions about what they're doing. I'll have to make another video, by the way, actually also critiquing the way that they lay out the coils like this. See how straight they are and curved? But I'll save that for another video about coil design and what seems to be the most superior coil design out there. But the long and the short of it is that the way that these coils are laid out, you'll have several spots on your body that will be dead zones, where your body will not have a direct coil underneath. So the world's best PEMF has actually more of a mesh. So that means you have literally no dead zones on your entire body because of the way it's actually beyond a coil system. It's actually better to do a mesh system, and that's what this other PEMF does. So I threw a lot of information at you. I'm the only one that kind of makes information like this in education in the industry. So most people that are talking about Ammortal are just, promoting it and getting paid to promote it. But I'm one of the few people that's actually just saying, listen, pursue these modalities separately. You'll get way better outcomes. And the cool thing about pursuing them separately, the last point I'll make is now they're standalone. So you will still have scenarios in a business, let's just say, or at home, where you don't have the time, or you just know that a person needs one particular modality more than another, or you just know that, I really need to do this modality for this person right now, and I need to do this modality for this person right now, right? Now you've got separate standalone. So you can always treat them in different areas. You can treat them on specific things. You get the idea, right? It at least offers you now more versatility in how you're using all that equipment. Or you can stack it all together. You know what I mean? Versus you're going to be, the Ammortal is one whole piece. You can't separate them out the modalities. You know what I mean? You got to do all of them together. So it's a little bit more disadvantageous. If you want to get great pricing on all these different modalities standalone and talk about different brands in each category, for the different type of therapeutics, you can reach out anytime to me 7 days a week.